Hey everybody, it's Sunday, May 28th, 2023. We got up early this morning, early-ish. We decided it's 56 degrees. So the fact that it's this cool, we decided to get suited up. Yay. And head out to the Beaver dams and try to really figure out where this thing's at. So we've had a camera set up on what we thought was his lodge this whole time, and it has gotten zero activity. So I do not believe now that that is its lodge. Plus, if you go over by the road, you can see how far this is backed up. So I think this Beaver's dam is more extensive than what we think. As we get back here, you can see that this is what's left of the other side of that trail that we had the forestry mulcher do, I don't know, back in September. But all this is now super wet because the Beaver has built up this dam, and it has continued all the way back over there, which is where the hill starts. And our house or barn is way up there. So all this, he's just been reinforcing this dam. Well, I say he, but there's 3 of them. So we're gonna hike back over here to where the trail cameras are at. And we're gonna be moving that one camera along with trying to locate where his actual lodge is. So we've obviously covered ourselves in bug spray, got these mosquito hats on. This is one of the posts that I put up for the trail cam, where this is where I was first digging an opening. I'm not going to be doing that today. I think it's a lost cause at this point. But over there is the other camera that we put up, and that's where I've been digging. But Emily's right now just stopping and investigating. And I'm sure we're gonna see a couple of those sticks that you don't want to pick up. So this is that last area that I was opening up. You guys saw the video of it, and where he has just constantly worked and reinforced this. So this is the actual branch of Lloyd Creek. This is what should be flowing with water. And this is the second dam, I guess, to correct everything I've set up until now. That had to have been the first dam, which is what we thought was the lodge. That's why we put this camera here, but it's not getting any footage of anything going on here. So this is its first dam, well, at least on our property. The second dam. But the only place for their lodge to be at this point is somewhere back there, and that's where we're going to try to go. So what we've done is we've walked the edge of the Beaver Dam back around here. Kind of came to a dead end because of a tree in the way. So we hiked through this little swampy area here to get over to here. And you can see the little guys chewed that tree down.
Fresh beaver.
So still working our way back here, trying to see what we can find out. So we were standing on that log over there. You can see the tree that he cut down or chewed down. We just had to go a long way around all this because one, the water's too deep and that stuff was way too thick to walk the edge. So we're still making our way around. Our property's back that way, and the road's back over here. But it's a pretty extensive dam. It's a lot bigger than what we thought so far. So this is what we're walking through. You see we're still on the edge of the water. And here the road's getting closer, but I think all this beaver has done is where the road is raised, That is where he has built. Sorry about that video. That trying to play limbo going under sticks while talking to you people. But we're getting closer to the road. I think the edge of the road is probably the edge of his dam. So after about, I don't know, 20 minutes of hiking, Emily's still working her way to me. But here's where the water's at. It's where the incline is going up to the edge of the road, and there's the edge of the road. I can't really see at all where our property's at, but I know it's back over that way. So he's pretty much dammed up this entire area in one way or another. So we're out here along the road, and I spot this little guy. He's hanging out alongside the road, looking at where all the water's at, probably looking for mice. See if he turns his head again.
Definitely looking down for mice.
I don't know why I'm trying to be quiet when the cars are going by. Then you got a redneck like that that's doing like 80 down a 50-mile-an-hour area. But sorry for the big swing here. Let me find him again.
We hear him sometimes.
Pretty cool. Really hoping he would have pounced on a mouse or something by now. And I thought if he does do that, and I don't have it on film, they'll be disappointed. But with all the traffic going by, I'm really surprised he's hanging out here.
Amazing how they can swivel their head that much.
He turned around on the log and it looked like he was about ready to pounce on something. Probably a frog or a mouse, but there he is, hanging out near Old Lloyd Road. So, Old Lloyd Road, like I just said, road going up to our properties there, and our property's way back there. This is a branch of Old Lloyd Creek, or of Lloyd Creek, sorry. It's Old Lloyd Road. But you can see this is all backed up over here. And then you come across the other side where the train trestle's at. And that Beaver family has got all this backed up underneath the train trestle. And who knows how far back that way. Our property, the other trail that we have cut comes back down in here. So because we can see this bridge in the winter when the trees are all bare, you can see the trail. It's, I don't know, maybe 50 feet, 50 yards, something like that. I don't know. Back over there. So I missed the owl taking off. But pretty good little hike this morning. See what else we get into. Locating the Beaver Lodge was obviously not a success, but the barred owl was pretty cool. So that made the trip worth it. But we'll try again. Probably have to wait till the fall when the vegetation dies down a little bit and the bugs aren't as bad. As we walk up this way, this is the road that we've kind of box bladed. Again, I don't know if you've seen the older videos, but box bladed, you know, several paths that were already here from the construction team that we bought it off of, or whoever. So we just kind of kept maintaining this because we needed to be able to get back in that area, you know, to clean up and pick up sticks and get those dirt piles, all those little, what I call my crop circles, all back in there. But the point of this is obviously the box blade drags all this stuff around and smooths it out. So things have been moved in the dirt quite a bit. Well, 2 weeks ago, Emily found in one of the washouts up here by the barn, where I've also box bladed, found that cannonball. We took it to the Oscilla Research Institute in Monticello, Florida. We met with a Dr. Willett Boyer, who looked at the cannonball. He's an archaeologist, I guess more of an expert in pottery and things of that nature, but pretty familiar with cannonballs. Confirmed it was a cannonball. He said he believes it's older than the Civil War, because during the Civil War they kind of perfected a little bit more, so the balls were more round. Ours isn't quite egg-shaped, but he said it's not perfectly round like he would have liked to have seen, and do the corrosion, things of that nature. So he's guessing, or educated guess, that that cannonball is probably from the mid, maybe even early 1700s, possibly when the British came in. This whole kind of chain going here all the way to St. Augustine, you know, a long way. The Spanish came here, started Spanish missions, where they ended up having Catholic churches and spreading the Catholic religion, helping the Appalachian Indians. But there were Spanish missions all throughout this part of Florida, all the way into Tallahassee. One of the things we did last weekend, we went to the San Luis, or Mission San Luis. And that's kind of what got this ball rolling on the cannonball thing. Is I found out that there was a Spanish mission somewhere here near Lloyd. Dr. Willett thought maybe that could have been in our area, so he asked if we had any pottery shards. We find all kinds of trash. Emily's been collecting all the glass and pottery and stuff that she finds, so we took it in, and here's what he had to say when he looked at it.
This is what is called pearlware. Pearlware began being manufactured in England about 1770 or so, when it was made through the 1840s. One of the things that distinguishes pearlware and a couple of these other things we're looking at is they're what's called refined earthenware. Pottery is basically classed into four broad categories regardless of what culture or people made it. You've got coarse earthenware, which is low-fired stuff up until about 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. You've got refined earthenwares, which became more common in the late 18th and the early 19th century, that are fired between about 1100 and 1300 degrees Fahrenheit. You've got, 1250 is actually a better thing. 1250 to 1350 is going to be stonewares, and we've got several examples of that here. And then the highest fired type of pottery is porcelain, which is fired between 1350 and 1450. If you get higher than that, you're basically starting to burn the impurities out. You're not going to get a ceramic, you're going to get glass. And porcelain, which is what this is, the highest fired stuff, is going to have this almost translucent edge to it. But all of these pieces here, even the ones that have blue on white, are porcelain. So these sherds, the type of porcelain with this type of decoration on it and that type of painting is going to be mostly 19th century, except maybe for this piece. This could be 19th century, it could be 20th. Based on the form of the edge, I think it's more likely to be 19th. But that's the highest fired stuff, that's porcelain. Now down at the other end of the scale, the lowest fired stuff, I didn't even need to test this one. This is Hurdy Cup. It's coarse earthenware. It would have looked like a larger flower pot, but this is the base, and this in the bottom is where you would get molten sap that you're collecting from the tree. We've got, well, you were in the hands-on room yesterday. We've got an intact one of these in there, but basically you'd cut a cat face, which is this vertical scar in the tree that bleeds sap, and you'd hang this down below it, below a trough, and every so often crews would go through the woods to collect the sap, and they'd take it to areas in different locations in the woods that were used to distill the sap into turpentine or other stuff or derivatives. Now, the refined earthenwares that you've got here, you've basically got two different kinds and 3 different styles. This is pearlware. This is the stuff that was made in the late 1700s and early 1800s in England. This is a refined earthenware, so it's fired between 1100 and 1250 degrees Fahrenheit. What distinguishes pearlware from the other type of refined earthenware we're going to look at, which is whiteware right there, is that pearlwares, they hadn't figured out how to fix the blue in the glaze. After you check the paste, you go to the surface treatment and or the glaze on a vessel. And this one, the surface treatment, it's been molded a little bit and then it's been glazed over. And you'll notice in this one, and I'll give you that piece to pass and take a look at it, but you can see that the blue has bled down into the bottom of the vessel. You can see right here, this one, you can see the line of blue. That's called pooling. Now, another thing that distinguishes pearlware from, and this is why I moved this over, is that with pearlware, even where the blue holds fairly well, you'll notice in this one, there's a bunch of little tiny dots like the one that's right there by my finger. That is where you've got the cobalt, which is what they used to make the, just a moment, let me look at this one again. Yeah, here we go. Or you can see right here in the white down below that, there's another blue dot that's in the middle of the white glaze right there. These pieces have things like that. And this one, you can see you got a little bleeding between the things that are here. Now, this one I'm classifying, I think, as pearlware. I think it's most likely because it feels like a refined earthenware. The only other possibility is there are some varieties of Spanish Maiolica that have this, that have a similar type of decoration, but this is a little too fine, so I'm 99% confident that should be classed with the pearlware as well. Same thing here. You can see where you've got the blue bleeding out around the painted decoration. And on the back side of this, in a few spots, you can see like some of the blue dots and the bleeding of the blue. Same thing right here. So all of this is going to date to between 1770 and 1840 in the broad range. With these pieces right here, you've got some that are a little bit older. This one right here is probably the oldest of this sample right here. Staffordshire potters are the ones that figured out how to make pearlware, and you'll notice the blue isn't just pooled at the bottom, it's kind of bled through all of the glaze. That's usually something that's made in the 18th century. So this one's probably between about 1774, 1790 or so. The rest of these are going to be the kind of pearlware that you would see more commonly in the early 1800s. The U.S. was still importing a lot of stuff from England up until we got our factories going and built. Now, when we did in the 1820s, this is more typical of what you'd see coming from the United States, and this is more common. This is called whiteware. Whiteware is going to be made between about 1820 and 1900. It's also a refined earthenware. One of the things that distinguishes whiteware a lot of times, you can see this piece has kind of a cracked glaze on it, so it's not always 100% true, but whiteware is usually going to have this kind of look to the surface where you've got crackling in the glaze, and where you're going to have something like this where you've got, you know, parts of the, well, this is actually a better example where it's been in the ground. For some reason, whiteware tends to absorb more of the stuff from the soil in it, but that's whiteware. This is whiteware too. This is what is called transfer printed whiteware. Transfer printed whiteware essentially is whiteware where you have taken a piece of paper and you've drawn out a design on it in ink, and the ink is still wet, and you would put the paper on the plate, on the vessel, and then you just put it in the kiln and fire it. And what happens is that the wet glaze absorbs the ink from the paper, which burns away and leaves this kind of real pretty design. And in this particular category right here, I wasn't sure about this, but I don't see any bleeding around this, and I don't see any of the blue dots on the back, so I'm pretty sure this should be classed as transfer printed whiteware. About this period of time, in some areas of the United States, you start to have, and England too, you start to have what are called maker's marks. And this design that's right here is a maker's mark. Can probably go online, and there are several references that I use, and we could get this a little more firmly dated, but this is a maker's mark. It's something
I
that,
liked the horses on it.
yeah.
I thought
Well,
that
that's,
was cool. I took a picture of it to blow it up so
yeah.
you could see it a little better.
yeah. This piece
There's
right
the
over
horses
here.
on it.
Wonderful nowadays.
Yeah. Now, this one right here is potentially the oldest, or maybe not. I think not, because it doesn't have some of the characteristics of the other stuff. This has a maker's mark on the back. Now, there's a variant of the oldest type of refined earthenware, British creamware, that was made between about 1760 and 1780, and some variants of it go up through 1810. I'm not 100% sure about classifying this as creamware, because most creamware doesn't have maker's marks. It doesn't even have designs on it. It's just kind of the same yellow color. So
always a
this may
yellowish
be
color.
later, it may be creamware. This one's the only one I'm not 100% sure about. About 1870 or so, well, no, excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. In the late 1700s in England, and then spreading to the United States by the early 1800s, you start to have several different kinds of what are called stonewares. Stonewares, remember, are the ones that are fired between about 1250 and 1350. And when you saw me dropping stoneware over there, the reason is that when you get real stoneware, if you listen, you see that has that kind of nice, solid, heavy clink to it. This is crock. It is very, very recognizable. The bumpy peel on the surface is where they shoveled salt into the kiln and burned it away during the firing process to glaze it. There's a variant of British salt glazed stoneware that's from the late 1700s. This is not that. This is definitely American stoneware, and this is actually very much like that vessel that we got over there in the case that's intact. Another stoneware variant, this starts up in the period between about 1830 and 1850. It's called banded annular ware. This is harder than refined earthenware. It's not quite as dense as some of these later stonewares, but it's still dense enough you should classify it there. And banded annular ware is called that because you've got basically these bands that have been fired into the glaze. It's got these very distinctive lines. This is the same type of pottery as that stuff on the bottom right of our case over there. So all of these pieces right here are banded annular ware. And these pieces right here, this is where I was starting off with. In the 1870s, you begin to have another variety of stoneware that's called ironstone china. They started making this, and whiteware kind of vanished by 1900, and they kept making, well, they still make some variants of this today, but this became more common for dinner plates because this is true stoneware. You know, you can drew the drop test, and you can feel how heavy it is. It's not impossible to break, obviously, or we wouldn't have this, but it is much harder to break, and it is much more durable than whiteware. So these things are going to be common after 1870. So you've got a site that probably was settled post 1820. Well, all of these artifacts, except for the lithics, which are vastly older. But these artifacts range between the earliest possible date range is the 1770s or 1780s. Given the variety of things that I see in here, this is probably post 1821. And whoever's living there probably has family members or descendants that's living there right on up until the beginning of the 20th century or a bit later. I'd say with a Hurdy Cup, you may have had the homesteader sell their land to somebody else, because what started happening with a lot of turpentine operations is you had people who were into the turpentine business buy smaller pieces of land, they amalgamate them because you need a lot of trees that are producing a lot of sap to do it on a commercially viable scale. So you may have a situation where at some point, whatever family had this material right here went ahead and sold out to somebody else. Or there's a possibility that maybe they owned part of the woods that they got turpentine from, and maybe this is something, you know, if this was not found immediately beside all of this, then it may be something that was that family operating. If this was found close to this stuff, there's a possibility that maybe what you've got going on is these folks selling out whoever was doing the turpentining. And these are definitely cut nails. The tops are square and flat. These started being manufactured in the very late 1700s in England, and this spread to the United States again when you have the Industrial Revolution cranking up here in the 1820s. The forge nails are going to have, you know, a larger head. Usually they're either going to be bent over on one side if they were made quickly, or they might be like the forge nails that are in our case, where the blacksmith has it through the hole and then gives it kind of this nice, neat pyramid shape. Those were used for specialty purposes. Most blacksmiths just cut sections out, did a real quick pound to the head, and then, you know, cut the end that's there. But this is definitely square cut nails. So this assemblage, except for the lithics, is 19th century with a date range between about 1820 or so, starting with a pearlware. Most likely, the older stuff that's in there is probably grandma's china, you know, or something that somebody was bringing. Most of the early settlers in this area are coming from South Carolina. You've got, you know, a lot of the old tombstones that talk about people coming here from Charleston. So, you know, that older stuff that's in there may be grandma's china, and the stuff that's in there may be the newer stuff that they're buying. That crock, that type of stoneware usually shows up about 1840 or 1850, and they keep making it on up until like the 1920s. It kind of goes out of fashion by the 1930s, and a lot of people.
That was in the 30s trash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I still thought it was cool. And it was big.
So long story short, all those pottery shards that we had found are from the late 1700s, going up to the early 1920-ish, I guess, maybe even newer. But it must have all belonged to the Willie family, which the Willies are the people that kind of founded this property. Now, the strange thing is, I was walking on one of our box-bladed paths yesterday, and I thought that was a stick, so I kicked it. And this is some kind of cast iron, maybe a piece to a fence or a gate, maybe a top to a bell. I have no idea. So it looks like I'm gonna call Dr. Willett Boyer again Tuesday. Pretty wild. They know there was a Spanish mission somewhere near Lloyd. So with the cannonball, other things we found, he still wants to come out here and take a look at the property. Says there's things that he can possibly identify that we wouldn't know, and I've warned him that, you know, the company that we bought the land from has really kind of destroyed the land, you know, bulldozed it down and taken trees out and ripped them out of the ground. So things have been moved around, so I don't know. But where I located that piece of cast iron was way back in there, but again, because it was on our trail, it could have been box bladed from pretty much anywhere where you see these roads back in here. So again, we found all kinds of evidence of, you know, some kind of building being back there, some kind of like coop, whether it's chicken coop, hog pen, something. There was trash pile back here that we've discovered. But all that pottery stuff we've found all throughout these areas. Not so much up in here, but down in here in this area. And one of the sad things that we were thinking is if there are any artifacts, when that company went and excavated all this to build the pond or the lake, wonder how many artifacts they took out of here. But that's how it goes. Where Emily found that arrowhead a long time ago is back over there again. So all kinds of stuff out here. Deer Run Farm.